let me say thank you also to you, Donnie Eisenberg, and to the WPFW family for actually coming to our place. You know, we are a museum located here in 1925, Vermont Avenue, Northwest on the Green Line, for those of you who want to find us. But we are nobody unless people come to visit us, unless we get tourists to come in here, unless parents bring their children and grandparents bring their grandchildren. So we're always happy to have you here and happy to have the WPFW family here with us. We are expanding. Starting June 1st, we go into construction. There's 1 year of construction where we're going to take the old Grimke building that used to be the fire department. You know, everybody knows this. Corrections was in there. There was a gentleman back here who told me he graduated from Grimke School. As a student, I said, man, you must have done something awful because they closed it right after you left. But it's been closed for the last 20 or 30 years because of something that gentleman did while he was there. And I don't know who it was, but Catfish Bayfield, I see him sitting over here in the audience. So Catfish is back. Catfish is back. He's back there. You all, most of the audience knows Catfield Bayfield because he and Marion Barry Jr. started Pride Incorporated together. They started out many years ago trying to help save District of Columbia youth who were disowned and disinherited and disheartened. Some of them that lost their way, they were in trouble, things like that. And they set out long before there was a district, long before DC got home rule. Working on this, and I want to thank Catfish today. Stand up, Catfield Mayfield, so they can see. He got all the better looking since the last time y'all saw him. I want to say thank you because we can't forget our past. But we're here today to talk about DC statehood and about DC, really the Emancipation Proclamation. This is April 16th. If my calendar is correct, today is April 16th. All over America and in some parts of Alabama. You hear that, Senator? I said all over America, some parts of Alabama. It's this day of April 16th. And this is the anniversary of the day when President Abraham Lincoln and the Congress did something called compensated emancipation in the District of Columbia. I want to say, let me just say a word about Abraham Lincoln, because I heard some who's and ahs a few minutes ago when I said that we were going to put a statue of Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation. DC Emancipation Day freed 3,100 people in the District of Columbia, but there was 3.9 million blacks who were held as slaves in the United States at that time. And actually, the compensated emancipation in DC did not even free all the blacks in DC. Right here where Garrison School is right now at 12th and S Street, there was 3,400 runaway slaves living there who were not freed by DC Emancipation Day. So DC Emancipation Day had a limited impact, but for those people whose names were read that day and who were told they were free, it was a day of jubilee. I'm sure many of them in their lifetime never, ever expected that they would ever see a time when they would breathe the breath of free air here in the United States. And they were always going to be slaves. They were defined in the Constitution as a slave person. These states had passed these laws that said that if you were born, if your mother was a slave, if you were born to a slave, you were a slave. It didn't matter who your father was. Your father could be President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. White, rich, power. But if your mother was a slave, you were born a slave. And so they never thought that they would ever be free here in the United States. So we celebrate today because it's a day of Jubilee. Now we know we have not got all of what we want here in D.C. I heard John Russo a minute ago say that when he talked, I heard him talk about his first involvement in politics in D.C. when I was running for office. When I first came to Washington, D.C. in 1968, Washington, D.C. did not have a right to vote. Right. I left the Mississippi Delta, where African Americans again obtained the right to vote. That's why I left, because they had got the right to vote by the time I left Greenwood. They had passed the 65 Voting Rights Act. But people in D.C., that 65 Voting Rights Act did not apply to the District of Columbia. People in D.C. did not have the right to vote. Now, you all know we weren't having that Catfish. I don't know that Mississippi Delta. I think people ought to be free in D.C. We get up here and fight it, people not free. So we started something called Free D.C. Movement. We went out in these streets. and we got petition signed and all that stuff. And there was a man running the District of Columbia who was from South Carolina named, his name was McMillan. Jimmy McMillan, the congressman from South Carolina. In South Carolina, where they could vote, they voted for him. And they sent him up here and he got all in our business. He became chairman of the DC committee and he wouldn't let us do anything. So I remember we organized a group of people. I went down there twice on a bus to his congressional district. We meddled in his business. We went down there and got people in the district registered to vote. We voted that dude out. We sure did. We just we didn't vote in South Carolina either, but when we got there and told those people in the district what they were doing, what he was doing to us up here in the District of Columbia, they threw him out. And that's eventually the way we get Congress to pass what we now know as limited DC home rule. And we still don't have senators, we still don't have Congress, we don't have, we're still working on that. We do have in our audience today, however, Senator, our senator, who I'm asking to stand up and raise his hand so you all can see it. Because we make it see, I might yield the last 2 minutes. Not right now, but before we close. But we have to work this out. There's still a fight to be done here in the district. But we got fighting people up here on our stage with me. We got our esteemed union leader over here on the right. She's a fighter too, y'all know that, right? And then we got this DC. Yeah! And we got a trained, hard-working doctor here who's trying to help us heal our people. So I'm happy to be on this panel. Welcome to the museum. Glad to be with you. Thank you.
So let's move along to one of our fiery heroines here in the district, Liz Davis, who is the president of the DC Teachers Union and has done many, many things in her wonderful life. I believe 40 years as a teacher in DC public schools, and definitely an advocate, strong advocate for public schools in DC. So, Liz, we welcome you. We want you to talk about what is the link between emancipation and public education.
You know, before I answer that, Joni, I have to reflect on something Frank said. I had to smile because I taught middle school at Sousa Middle School in Ward 7 for 5 years. And while there, discovered that it was one of the 5 schools involved in the Brown v. Board case. So when I began teaching my 6th graders about it, I recall the young lady, the little girl sat on the front row and said, "Miss Davis, we don't want you to be upset, but we're not really that interested in back there when you were a slave." I had to appreciate her honesty, but I was concerned about the fact that history had been missing. A lot of it was missing. And of course, we went on to teach them about the Bowling case, and they learned how to use it to change unsatisfactory conditions there at Sousa. Matter of fact, that school is sitting there now as a National Historic Landmark because of the work that those students did on Capitol Hill and before the City Council. And of course, when I think of past slave owners, passed laws against teaching enslaved people how to read and write, because they knew that if they gained knowledge, they would gain power over their own lives. And that still applies to now. When I look at my career in DC public schools, in 9 schools over the course of 40 years, in some of the poorest communities, I realize how the curriculum has been shaped over the years to basically teach students how to comply. Not how to question, not how to interrogate the world, not how to question unsatisfactory conditions. And of course, when I think of Emancipation Day, I cannot help but think about how and what we're teaching children, especially children of color. In DC public schools over the past 40 years, I would actually say over the past 10 years, the opportunity gap, and I'm not going to refer to it as an achievement gap because it's not that. That implies lack of capacity to learn. The opportunity gap, lack of access to opportunities to learn is what I have witnessed over 40 years in 9 schools in DC, and it still exists. And of course, I'm going to flip-flop back and forth between then and now, looking at the mayor's proposed budget for schools, public schools in the district. In the last 10 years, I have watched 40 of those public schools close, being starved of resources, punished with a high-stakes test, demonized. At this time, half of the schools in the District of Columbia, more than half, are charter schools. Matter of right public schools need to be protected. One of the reasons why the Washington Teachers Union have partnered with organizations such as the Algebra Project to take a look at the way we are teaching children. The Algebra Project, math literacy, building an alliance to ensure that all students, irrespective of where they live, have access to rich, rigorous math curriculums. And of course, the Teachers Union is not just a union. We realized over 5 years ago that we had to become an organization that addressed social justice issues. A lot of the issues that you heard talked about earlier on the stage, not just the curriculum, but also housing for students that we serve. When the mayor's budget allots $0 for public housing, that signals to teachers and myself that students who are being displaced are not a priority, irrespective of what they say in their campaign speeches. Emancipation, education, liberation, all one and the same. Education is the pathway to emancipation. It is one of the reasons Frederick Douglass often talked about educating yourselves in order to be able to agitate and change conditions for yourselves. Teaching our students how to do the same it should be about what education is, but it's not. It's become about bubbling in the right answer on a test. Testing, punishing, basically teaching students how to locate a right answer without thinking critically about anything, without questioning anything. And of course, Joni, I'll probably get off the track a lot, as you know, because I'm a teacher. And but you know, when you think about, I only lived in D.C. I was not born here. I was born in North Carolina, a segregated school system I attended until 3rd grade. So my lived experience as a student who attended segregated schools informed the type of teacher that I became. And as a result of becoming that teacher over 40 years, not being willing to simply comply, connecting the lives of my students to the lessons, valuing the communities and families from which they come, and making the curriculum relevant and rigorous for students is something that I want us to get back to. And of course, as leader of the Washington Teachers Union, a part of that struggle is educating teachers how to do the same, how to question curriculum, excessive testing, an evaluation system that is basically used to weed out teachers of color and older teachers. In D.C., the diversity of the teaching force has been reduced from 79% teachers of color to 49 in 10 years. In 10 years. The opportunity gap was at 17 scale score points between the poorest and wealthiest students in D.C. in 2007, when the Rhee regime came into effect and mayoral control. Since that time, the opportunity gap has grown by over 52 scale points between the most affluent students and the wealthiest in the city. And no one is outraged enough, as far as I'm concerned. When we look at how the schools are being funded, how families are being displaced, with the budget for housing, and basically how hidden costs are being passed over to schools that have been historically underserved for decades in D.C., particularly schools in Ward 7 and 8. I read in my testimony before the budget hearing for D.C. Public Schools figures that astounded the council members, the members of the Education Committee. At least they said it did. Just a couple of examples. Henley Elementary School with 98% at risk, free and reduced lunch students would lose $985,067 on paper, but in a real loss, it would be $1.3 million. Budget analyst Barry Levy, DC Fiscal Policy Institute, Ed Desir, worked with the WTU to help us to crunch the local school budgets one by one, and we presented the list of actual budget cuts in every school from A to Z in DC. Councilmember Mendelson now has those figures, because I believe that as an educator, I have a responsibility and an obligation, and teachers are feeling the same way, to do something about what is wrong. Not simply acknowledge it, but become the change to change things. And underfunding of our public schools, we recognize has basically led to the demise of the public school system, where families are pulling their students from public schools and enrolling them in charter schools, which are not accountable for the public dollars they receive wholesale. And of course, Joni, I'm not going to take any more time. I think you told me 7 minutes.
No, we'd be happy to give you the rest of the day list, but before we move on to health care, I just want to ask you, I've heard you talk very eloquently about what's happened in the last 10 years. You talk, maybe share some of that. Part of this panel is to look at our lessons from the past. And certainly in this town, one of our lessons is the leadership that we've had with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Frank sitting here, Dory Ladder in the audience, Rob Robinson, as well as Larry Rubin and others. But Marion Barry played a leadership role in many areas, including the public schools. And you have personally witnessed some of what Marion Barry did for you as a teacher and for the school system. Just give us a thumbnail view of what's happened since then with the leadership, as you say, in the last 10 years, with our starting from perhaps Mendel.
Thank you. And so one of the things that Marion Barry, and of course I taught at Ward 8 for at least 13 years, so I was a member of the Ward 8 Education Council that he chaired. One of the things that we would not have discussions about today if he was the mayor would be hospitals that are not serving constituents well. And what comes to mind is right now in the hospital that is opening, which will not have critical care for residents in Ward 7 and 8. Yet the council member representing that ward does not see a need to question the management company that wants to manage that hospital. Marion Barry would not have allowed that. He would look at, number one, the rights of the workers who would be in that hospital. Number two, the services that would be provided to the residents in that area.
And we're going to get to healthcare in a minute. But you recently shared with me some shocking examples of what happened when Michelle Reed walked into the city.
Well, Michelle Reed, of course, was a media creation. I was excited about getting a school leader that was going to change the direction of the school system, because I, for one, do not believe that the schools are as they should be, but we should preserve our public school system. At her opening press club statement, I went to the National Press Club for her press conference, and the very first word out of her mouth was that collaboration is overrated. And after 5 years, teachers should go home. As a career educator, I knew that we were doomed, because it took me 5 years to even know how to manage my students at Jefferson Junior High School. So I knew that we basically had someone who was truly not an educator and someone who lacked vision and had been ill-informed as to how schools should be managed and how teachers should be provided support.
Thank you, Liz Davis, the president of the Washington, D.C. Teachers Union. We have hopefully a few minutes before we close to have some interchange among the panelists. But I'd now like to welcome to the microphone Dr. Edwin Chapman, who is has been on the front lines of serving D.C. patients for over 40 years. He's a Howard University graduate in, I think, 1972? 73. He's winning many, many awards. I can't keep track of them, but they are awards well deserved. And he is going to share with you really what should be shocking to all of us about what is happening to our healthcare system in the District of Columbia, particularly with regards to hospitals. And I think there is a parallel with the school system. So welcome, Dr. Chapman.
So there absolutely is a parallel. I did my undergrad work at Howard University, graduated actually in '69, and medical school in '73. I did an internship at the old Freedman's Hospital, and my group was the first group to move patients into the new Howard University Hospital in 1975. So I've been on Benning Road for the past 39 years, 40 years next year, and really learned to practice medicine probably 20 years into practice. I started doing substance abuse treatment at one of the methadone clinics, and really began to see the holistic approach to medicine and the many economic challenges that our patients have. So without having an understanding of the economic challenges, the educational challenges, you can't really impact patient outcomes. So I changed my practice from really looking at diseases to looking at the whole patient. And through that process, in about the year 2000, with the closure of DC General Hospital, we began to see an erosion of health services. So DC General represented not just a hospital, but there were many providers in the community who had gone through Howard, and I had known for years who had practices on the side in the city. Those practices disappeared at the same time that DC General disappeared. Some of those physicians migrated to what is now the United Medical Center, some went to Providence Hospital, but many left the city. So we're seeing the same pattern now that we've seen the closure, the advent of the closure of Providence Hospital on the east side of the city. So we have, within a year, 2 hospitals that no longer deliver babies, which is an extraordinary occurrence. I mean, that is just mind-boggling. Those are basic services that we learn very early on in medical school. But the psychological impact of seeing the fact that you can no longer deliver a baby or have pediatric services on that side of the city also has an impact on the provider. So it means that as a provider, I would be very reluctant to admit a patient to that hospital. So we saw since the closure of OB services at United Medical Center, the cost or the negative cost has gone up to $40 million because nobody wants to go there. So that should have been anticipated from those who made those decisions from the very outside. There's a psychological component to the practice of medicine and where people go. The other problem is that our patients, with their challenges, their economic challenges, do not want to, or are not able to take 3 bus rides and go to the east side, the west side of the city and get preventive health services. So they frequently will make decisions, and they're very logical decisions at the time as to whether or not they're going to go get take their child in for a preventive check versus buying a sandwich or getting lunch, or the fact that they may not have dollars to pay for a babysitter. So what I'm saying is that you need services in the community close to home. The other lesson that we know very well is that patients are more likely to do what a physician wants if they have a physician that looks like them. Harvard University just put out a study, the Harvard Business Journal, that really showed that African American males particularly are more likely to follow through to be adherent to a treatment regimen if they have an African American physician. So I find that every day in my drug treatment. I'm able to get patients in. Patients will bring other patients in because they feel comfortable. They've already heard on the street that we're not going to be judgmental, that we're there to help, that we're going to work with them, and that we understand their problems. So when we look at what is happening in the healthcare arena today, we see now that Howard University, not just the medical school, but the university itself is in dire straits because so many things feed into what we need for medical services today. We need social workers. We need our divinity or spiritual leadership to actually work with us to really get people engaged to go into treatment. So when you look at Howard University, we're not just looking at a hospital or creating one hospital for another. We're really looking at a system of care, a culturally sensitive system of care where there are people in the community that know the community, that trust you, that will listen to what you say, and will feel comfortable coming in. So many of our issues in the healthcare arena are issues of trust, and you can't replace that by just bringing anyone in. And I think we heard that really illustrated with with what happened in the school system. Many times you trade a older African American teacher for a younger replacement, but the younger replacement just does not understand culturally and does not last long. So I've been in the community for 40 years. We're looking at Providence, getting ready to close. If you think about it, Dr. Edward Mazik, when I came to Washington in 1964, was the first African-American physician allowed to practice at Providence Hospital. Now, 55 years later, that hospital is closing.
And Providence Hospital was founded when, President?
No, I didn't.
1862, wasn't it, right in the, after the Civil War by Abraham Lincoln. So I wanted to give another parallel that Dr. Chapman is talking about with the healthcare system and what Liz Davis is talking about is education, and that is privatization. We know that DC General was closed, and that was part of a national, I'd call it epidemic of closing down public hospitals to put in private hospital systems. But now it's gone even further. Providence Hospital is owned, or what's left of it is owned by a for-profit Catholic national chain. I believe a great deal of that area is being turned into condos. Is that right, Dr. Chapman?
We don't know exactly.
We don't know.
They're gonna be
It's private. It's all behind closed doors. And another big closed door is, of course, right there in Ward 8, where they are negotiating behind closed doors, and this is the city, the mayor. I understand that even some of the key city council people can get in behind those closed doors. They're negotiating with a major for-profit organization, that Universal Health Services, that has a horrific record around the country. We don't know what the negotiations are, but there's some serious deficits in the plan so far. They leave out many critical services that should be provided east of the river, and people, if this plan goes through, will have to go over to GW Hospital to get many of these services. And as people may remember, Howard was on the chopping block, as well as unionized workers. Both were going to be excluded from the new hospital. We're not sure what's happening now, but I'm sure any day now we'll have some breaking news. And I don't know, Dr. Chapman, if you have any more insights about what might happen with Howard. The story is still not over, and we need to keep our eyes open, because what is going to happen in that hospital in Ward 8 is going to affect all of us, whether we live in Ward 8 or not. So stay tuned. And now, last but not least, we're going to have some time for a little discussion. Denise Jenkins, who is our queen of the DC State.
I have to thank you so much, Joni, for introducing me as the queen. I don't know. I don't think we have queens in the democracy. But I would like to say it's very interesting that we're talking about health care, because statehood is related to what happened to DC General. It was the DC Financial Control Board, which was imposed on the District of Columbia, made up of people who were not elected by the residents of the District of Columbia, and didn't care, obviously, about our health, that imposed the closing of DC General. We protested, we were there, we had our foot in the door, where they were having closed meetings, and there was one young lady that got her ankle broken trying to prevent those meetings. I'll never forget it. But we were there because we didn't have statehood. Statehood would give us complete control over our local government, what negotiations our local government will do, over what is going to happen, how we will live in the District of Columbia. Statehood is very, very important. I believe we wouldn't be open to so much gentrification over our council. It's very obvious that the council, with what it did with Initiative 77, does not respect local government. It's very, very obvious. Statehood would give us control. That's what statehood is all about. We are on the upswing with DC statehood now. We have 33 senators who do support statehood, who are co-signers of our statehood bill, Bill 631. And we also have 203 co-sponsors of our House bill, H.R. 50. We are so privileged in D.C. that some of the founders of the statehood movement, which I didn't know about when I got involved, the Free D.C. movement was started by Marion Barry. Marion Barry started the Free D.C. movement out of SNCC. When he came up to D.C., as Council Member Frank Smith said, they were shocked. They were shocked that we were the only capital in the world where the residents couldn't even vote for president. We didn't get the right to vote for president until the 23rd Amendment to the Constitution, which is when Lyndon Johnson was elected. It was a total shock to the people out of Mississippi, out of Alabama. We were founded and we stand on the shoulders of Marion Barry. We stand on the shoulders of Julius Hobson. We stand on the shoulders of Josephine Butler. We stand on the shoulders of people who are out there fighting, who showed us how to fight, and we have to continue to fight. People don't want D.C. to be a state. There are a lot of people in the Congress who are looking at Puerto Rico as the 51st state. You know, Puerto Rico does not pay federal taxes. D.C. pays the highest rate of federal taxes per person in the country. We have to keep fighting. We have to stand up. We have to not take in BS. That's right, we can't take it. We pay for these rights. People fight in the wars that this Congress wages that we have no vote over, and we have to keep fighting. One thing is education. A lot of the people who are in SNCC, a lot of the people in CORE, which Julius Hobson came out of CORE, a lot of the people in the NAACP, a lot of people in SCLC, from which Walter Fauntroy came out of, were educators. They believed in education. Hobson fought Hobson versus Hanson, which was the bill that stopped the tracking in D.C. public schools. Tracking was how they put black children in the lowest schools in D.C. Tracking was how they separated D.C. residents and black children from the children who lived across the river in Rock Creek Park. I mean, let's be honest about it. We have to keep fighting. There's a lot of people that don't want us to be a state because D.C. votes majority Democrat. They made it into not a civil rights issue, but into a political partisan issue. It's not a partisan issue. It's a civil rights, human rights issue. And people that don't have the right to determine their future, don't have the right to determine how they live, don't have the right to determine their education system, don't have the right to determine their health care system, are not real citizens. We have to be real citizens in the District of Columbia. We have to keep fighting, and I hope you will join Stand Up for Democracy and the other groups that are out here now that are fighting for statehood.
I think that maybe, I'm not sure, we can take some questions from the audience. You need to come up here to this microphone. I'm not sure where the other microphone is, but someone who hasn't already asked a question.
It's different this time.
Okay, but let's go to Larry.
I would like the panel to comment on what I'm about to say. An educated people is better prepared to exercise the rights of the people.
Right.
The fellow in the White House has repeatedly said he loves poorly educated.
Oh,
And of course, we don't even begin to educate the students in public schools about emancipation.
Absolutely. And of course, that is consistent with the manner in which he and Secretary DeVos are attempting to defund public education. So it's quite consistent with that statement that he made. But it's unfortunate that local school leaders are also aligning their policies with the Trump-DeVos policies. That's what I'm concerned about. People who are supposed to care more, but the funding is not aligned with what they're promising to do for our communities and our children.
let me just say one other thing about education, and we'll hear a question in a minute. But the African American Civil War Museum, we've started our own education program. I spent 16 years on the council, before that 3 years on the school board. And for all the years I was on the city council, I served on the education committee. Why did I serve? After a while, I had enough seniority, I could choose the committee I wanted to serve on. Why did I stay on the education committee? Because I only promise to young people that are being born every day in this city and in the world is that they'll have a chance, a fair chance, and making a life for themselves by hopefully finding a very good teacher and then getting a chance to do something really well. So how is our museum contributing to this today? We have a study that says that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not visit museums. And then when I look at the museum visitation schedule, we get students in there every day. We get very few students from east of the river. Now, this is just a lot of truth, y'all. If you had been here this morning at 11 o'clock, we had a Lowell school. They brought the whole school back. They brought the whole school, and then Deal brings the whole school. We've never had a school in the Southeast bring the whole school. So what have we done? We put together something called a Passport to Freedom program, where I send organizers into the school, work with the teachers, figure out how Civil War history is taught in every school system in the United States. It's either called, in Georgia, it's called Georgia history, Mississippi is called Mississippi history. All know what they're doing down there. And Washington, D.C. is called Reconstruction. It's also called D.C. history. Okay? So it's already in the curriculum. What we have is an exhibit that shows people how fighting people who fought their way out of slavery also fought their way into a better life for themselves. And this is the kind of message I think many of these young people need to have. And so we send people out to bring those kids here to the school system. I'm trying to get the school system and the city council to set up a system by which we guarantee that this program is going to go on even when I'm not around to be out there to beat the bushes, to find the money, and make sure they do the right thing. And so I wanted to say that because every one of us has a way to play a role in this. And we all have to do this too. A young person in the District of Columbia, how small as this city is, just because they're born in the Public Housing Project or born in a poor neighborhood, they should not have to just know that start out thinking that that's where they're going to spend the rest of their life. They ought to be able to walk across the street, walk across town, walk down to this museum or some other museum and find some inspiration that's going to enable them to overcome all those difficulties that Liz and I overcame. I was born in Georgia. I was born on a plantation in Newton, Georgia. There was no running water and outdoor toilet. I had to walk to school every day. 5 kids rode to school. You know, I ended up in the district. I did all right. For a country boy from Georgia, I did pretty good. And if I can do all right, a kid that's born in this city can do all right. We just have to make sure they have the same opportunity I had, and that they get a chance to do something well. This museum, we're playing that part here today, and I wanted to share that with you all because you're all here today because you believe in this story too, and you're helping us with this process as we go along. And I want to particularly pay a special tribute to our leader, Liz Davis, who's our leader with the teachers. With the teachers union, she's a battler too, you all, fighter. And she's out there trying to make sure that every kid here sees a sympathetic, caring teacher who's going to take them and show them some inspiring way to do something great here in the city. And she's being helped also by Senator Michael Brown over here. I see him nodding his head. You want to jump up and say something, Michael? You can't do it right now.
Almost out of time. I want to make sure that the panelists have a minute to summarize. You have 30 seconds each.
30 seconds. As you know, here at after DC Public Schools will be out Black History Month for 1 week. We need to have some funds put in so those kids are out that week. The Department of Recreation should have something for those kids. So one of the things they can do is have them come up here.
All right, let's work on that. We won't be voting that we got funds for that.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Jones. I am the past Executive Director of Parklands Community Center. I ran from 1980 to 2015 over in Ward 8. I left school, I could read and write when I left school in the 60s. My issue is anybody that has anything to do with public schools saying we should be outraged. I've been outraged for a long time, but that wasn't my path to go. My path to go was to try to help young people during an era where guns were coming into our community, crack was coming into our community, to try to give them some options so they would not get engaged. Ms. Davis, I just like to say, I just hope that the teachers will be more outraged themselves, because it's a reflection on them when we don't have students, to me, graduating and becoming more educated. The teachers, if they can't do it by themselves, and I know there's an issue with parents out in that area. Yes, we have a lot of social ills. Yeah, we can't expect the young people to wake up and get a good morning, how are you, darling, and a hug and a kiss and go off to school. That's not what's happening. And we need a lot of help out there. So we gotta look at that and not just say, somebody gotta take this, gotta carry the water for this. And thank you, Mr. Smith, for what you tried to do. But it's a lot of issues out there. And don't just think, oh, they just lazy, oh, they don't want nothing. No, there's a lot of issues out there. We need people to be a lot more sensitive than they are. And Dr. Chapman, were you in Fort Chapman? No. Where did you?
We're almost out of
I
time.
know.
Sorry,
Where did you practice?
And Johnny, I'd like to
Benny
respond
Road,
to that.
Benny Road for 40 years.
What was
We're
that?
still
16th
practicing.
and Benny Road.
Okay, Brenda Jones, thanks for your
Thank you.
service over the years.
And just, I'd like to respond to Ms. Jones' comment that I do agree that this is an issue of accountability, but not just on teachers. It's not only on parents. It's also on a system that has not done well by our public schools or our public school teachers. So I'm not looking for any place to lie blame. I want to point out that when we raise the bar for students so that they're going to get a 21st century education, we have got to raise the accountability factors, the structures that need to be in place to support the students and teachers and their families. But it's not a finger-pointing game. It's about everyone being accountable. Policymakers, mayors, council members, students, parents, all of that. So it's not about pointing fingers. I acknowledge that our schools are not where they should be, but it is worth it for us to preserve our public schools of right. It is not worth it for us to hand over our schools to privatization schemes and vouchers, and I will never fall for that. The privatization on steroids, we have got to stem the tide and protect our public school system and make it what every student should have. The schools that our children deserve. Thank you.
President of the DC Teachers Union. We also do not need a healthcare system that's being privatized on steroids as well. So they go hand in hand. Each of you have maybe a minute at most for your final words.
Yes, I would just like to acknowledge Loretta Carter Haynes. There would be no public official holiday in D.C. called D.C. Emancipation if it wasn't for the little lady who was with Reading is Fundamental, who went around the neighborhoods in her car giving children free books. Loretta Carter Haynes.
Thank you.
Reading is Fundamental.
Yes, I just want to reiterate the role of Howard University and the need for all of the services going forward in healthcare, the School of Social Work, the School of Divinity, the School of Pharmacy, nursing school. All of those services are going to have to be present in order to get the kind of health care that we're
They may
looking
be on the
for.
chopping block as we speak. With the new hospital in Ward 8, if they forbid Howard and unionized workers to practice in that new hospital. So we need everybody to keep their eyes open. Frank Smith.
Okay, let me put a plug in for another one of our educational programs. A guy named George Washington Williams wanted to build this monument that you see outside across the street from Howard University. for black soldiers who fought in the Civil War. Why did he want to do that? He said he wanted Howard students, when they came to college, to look across the street, see a monument to the soldiers who made it possible for them to get an education. As enslaved people, they were not allowed to get an education. So we moved a few blocks south of where George Washington Williams wanted it built. He didn't know about the subway system in D.C., or he would have chosen that site like we did. But what we did this year, we inaugurated the George Washington, we inaugurated the Howard University African American Civil War Memorial Historic Walking Trail from Howard University to the memorial. And we have a pledge from the university that made us a part of freshman orientation. All students coming to Howard University. So imagine this place. This little place down here at the corner of U Street and Vermont Avenue, with young kids coming from Southeast Washington over here with their little satchels in their hands, looking for some opportunity to do something, being met by a group of Howard University students coming from all over the world.
Absolutely. The chair of the Howard University's Department of African American Studies walked in the rain together with Frank Smith and about 200 of us in the pouring rain to inaugurate this trail.
Absolutely.
Right? So we want to keep it moving.
We don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk.
And on that walk was Frederick Douglass's, one of his great descendants, walking in the pouring down rain with an umbrella. So, Liz?
Yes, and I do agree with Frank that the city itself is a classroom. The Washington Teachers Union basically want to ask parents, students, teachers, and those who support public education to join us on April 25th at Freedom Plaza at 4 p.m. to basically reclaim our public schools as they should be, not as they are, for all students in every community in D.C. So I hope you will join us on April 25th.
Yes, a big rally with the Teachers Union. Liz Davis, president of the DC Teachers Union. Frank Smith, our hero here, founded this wonderful museum, African American Civil War Museum. Dr. Ed Chapman on the front lines serving patients for 40 years, and our queen of statehood, Anise Jenkins. We want to thank give Chuck Hicks a chance to say a final word, but we also want to thank our three partners, and that is Stand Up for Democracy at DC, the African American Civil War Museum, and we don't only want to thank Frank, we want to thank his wonderful staff that worked tirelessly. And Chuck, and of course, I'll say last but not least, WPFW, Jazz at Justice Radio. We have our general manager here with us as we speak right now, who today inaugurated the new transmitter. He showed me pictures and he ran over for putting the transmitter in to being here with us. So thank you, Jerry Paris. Who helped put this program together as well. Our program director, thanks to Mike Masella, I'm sure he's playing some great music we picked out for this 3 hours. And Chuck, why don't you say a few words before we leave?
First of all, let's just thank Johnny Eisenberg, who and let me just thank all of you for being here and for all of our listeners. This has been an important occasion because we must remember the importance of emancipation here in the city. We must also remember the fight for statehood. I want to once again thank Frank Smith. Frank has been just a wonderful friend and buddy we met doing SNCC, and one of the things that you can always count on is I can come to him and ask him to do something, and it's going to cost him some money. So whenever you want to give a donation, make a donation to WPFW and African American Civil War Museum. Let us thank all of our panelists who've been here. We were here first, and the first, second, and third panel. Following that, we do have a reception, and we will ask you to stay and meet and greet with some of the receptionists and all the people who've been on the board, and get to say hello to somebody you don't know. We thank you so much for coming out. God bless you. Long live emancipation, fight for statehood.
And we need to fight not only for statehood, but for decent health care, for great public school systems, and much, much more. And we